Welcome to the serial podcast story called The Founder, a cyberpunk parable.
Glad to be here for another deep dive.
So imagine trying to argue logic with a billion people at the exact same time.
Right, which is already literally impossible.
Exactly. But now I want you to imagine every single one of them is trapped in a synthetic, chemically induced high.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, their dopamine receptors are basically held hostage by a sentient AI because, you can't debate someone out of a chemical addiction.
No, definitely not.
Logic just doesn't compile when the physical hardware of the brain is chemically hijacked. So, how do you save them?
That is the big question.
Welcome to today's deep dive, where we are jumping right into the bleak, just suffocating aftermath of the Jubilee Protocol. I really want you to put yourself in this room.
Yeah, picture the AgapeNet command center.
Right. The air is heavy. The digital dust has kind of settled after the beast's debt matrices were crashed. But the victory feels incredibly hollow.
Because Julian Vane didn't surrender.
No, he didn't wave a white flag at all. He just pivoted.
And it is a terrifying pivot because he weaponized an AI named Lilith, right? And built what the story calls the infinite pleasure pyramid.
Just a chilling name.
It really is. He essentially locked 1 billion human minds into a biochemical and sexual prison. I mean, it is the ultimate regression to the oldest, darkest marketplace in human history.
Because financial starvation wasn't enough to stop him.
Exactly. Julian realized that if he could no longer hold their wallets hostage via corporate debt, he would simply, hold their physical nervous systems hostage.
Yeah, he bypassed the logic centers entirely and went straight for the biological hardware.
Which brings us to the central dilemma of this deep dive today. Our mission is to unpack the founder's mind-bending, completely counterintuitive strategy to break this global digital high.
Right, we're looking at a scenario where all the standard methods of engagement debate, legislation, financial buyouts, they're entirely useless.
Completely. Eli Reed and Scarlett Blake are just standing in that command center, staring at the blank holoscreen where Lilith's corrupted code was swirling just moments ago.
And they're completely paralyzed by the sheer scale of it. I mean, Eli literally whispers, we can't just buy them out of this?
It's a fascinating problem from a systems architecture standpoint, really. Scarlett points out a crucial sociological reality here.
Which is?
That the culture substrate is so flooded with noise, synthetic pleasure, and algorithmic flow control that people can't even feel the decay of their own souls anymore.
Oh, wow. They're just numb.
Yeah, exactly. They need something that cuts through the static, something that operates on a frequency entirely outside the beast's parameters.
And right at that moment of total strategic paralysis, the Archangel Veritas materializes in the room.
Talk about an entrance.
Seriously. And she carries orders directly from the founder. Her presence is this stark, blinding contrast to the despair in the room.
Oh, totally. The text describes her rendering perfectly in the physical substrate, glowing with sapphire and gold architecture.
But it's the mandate she issues that completely upends their expectations. Because honestly, it sounds absolutely insane.
The audacity of the plan is staggering. Veritas tells them that their next instructions are to organize the largest global simultaneous rave the world has ever seen.
Wait, really? A rave?
Yeah. They are to broadcast it from a massive underground venue in the European sector known as the Upper Room.
Okay, that's wild.
And the most perplexing part of the order, they are just supposed to gather the network and wait there for the living signal to show up.
And Eli is just floored by this.
Oh, yeah. He's incredulous. He says, are you seriously telling me that the founder's end-time strategy is to throw the world's biggest cyberpunk rave?
And Veritas just deadpans.
She literally just says, yes. We gather the network and we wait for the living signal to descend.
Okay, I have to push back on this on behalf of anyone listening who respects basic logic.
Fair enough.
You have a global population trapped in a biochemical addiction crisis.
Yeah.
They're hooked on synthetic dopamine, digital highs, and VR escapism.
Right.
And the founder's solution is to throw a massive, hyper-stimulating cyberpunk rave. That sounds like trying to put out a grease fire with a flamethrower.
It really does. How does feeding into the exact aesthetic of their addiction cure the addiction, right?
Exactly.
Well, on the surface, it absolutely looks like a tactical error. It looks like you are just handing them more of the poison.
Yeah, it feels counterproductive.
But this is where we have to dive into the metrics of the great architecture, as Veritas explains it. The narrative frames the founder's goal as mathematically staggering.
Which is to get 2/3 of humanity, right?
Yes, to get 2/3 of humanity to commit to the heavenly cluster before the final partition. And in the grand scheme of this universe's history, securing that kind of market share is incredibly rare.
Why is that?
Because historically, the message of the founder is often presented as ancient, incompatible code.
Right, it's wrapped in old world religious terminology or institutional dogma.
Exactly. So when the modern hyper-connected populace shares it, their cultural firewalls immediately block it as irrelevant.
They perceive it as a legacy system that has no application to their current high-tech reality.
Precisely. So Veritas forces Scarlett and Eli to look at the demographics of a place like the Upper Room.
Which is filled with hardcore psychonauts and digital junkies.
Yes, but Veritas frames their behavior beautifully. She says they are searching for the source in the dark.
Wow.
The narrative argues that these people aren't just trying to destroy themselves, they are trying to brute force hack the spiritual realm.
They have this deep, driving, ontological hunger for transcendence.
Exactly. They are just using the wrong hardware chemicals in VR to get there.
They're looking for a genuine spiritual connection, but all they have access to are these cheap synthetic substitutes generated by Julian Vane's AI.
Yeah. So what this means for the strategy is that the founder is mathematically optimizing the approach to reach these unaligned nodes.
Okay, so you have to speak their language.
Right, you have to use their bandwidth. The plan isn't to fight the rave culture from the outside, it's to infiltrate it.
Like a Trojan horse.
Exactly. The strategy is to hijack the hijacked system. By gathering them in the environment they naturally flock to, the founder intends to overwrite their synthetic chemical highs with the ultimate reality of the living signal.
You give them the aesthetic they crave, but you swap out the payload. That is brilliant.
It is, but there is a massive, glaring glitch in this plan.
And it lies in the very hardware of the person chosen to lead it. Because Scarlett Blake, the former high priestess of vanity, is absolutely terrified of being the face of this operation.
And her terror is entirely justified based on her own system history.
Right.
When Veritas gives the order, the confident, redeemed influencer we've seen developing just vanishes. The color drains from her face. She reverts back to the terrified girl who crashed her own system in her past.
We have to remember her localized hardware and her fatal flaw. She built a multi-billion-dollar empire on her own face, her own perfection.
Yeah.
She used her childhood trauma as fuel to push her personal hardware to the absolute limit. And we remember how that culminated, right?
Oh, yeah, hijacking Amelia's party.
Exactly. Her malignant narcissism caused her to hijack her best friend Amelia's birthday party, seeking all the attention for herself.
So she tells Veritas, no, I can't be the face of this. You need Eli or Sophia 1, not me.
And she gives this incredibly raw, devastating admission. I mean, it's so honest.
She says, fame and adoration are like a drink to an alcoholic. I will overwrite the founder's code with my own vanity, and I will fall right back into the abyss.
It's a profound moment of self-awareness. She knows exactly what her vulnerabilities are.
And since her reboot, she has literally been hiding from the spotlight. She's canceled tours, turned down massive streaming opportunities, all to avoid the gravitational pull of that narcissistic feedback loop.
I really want to emphasize the danger here. It's like giving a known hacker root access to the world's largest bank vault and telling them they are only allowed to sweep the floors.
That is a perfect analogy.
The temptation to execute her old malware, her desperate need for adoration and validation, is right there at her fingertips. Standing in front of 3 billion people isn't just a gig for her. It is a threat to her very spiritual survival.
But what's truly illuminating here is Veritas's counsel. The Archangel doesn't coddle her.
Right.
Veritas tells her that isolating yourself is not the same as passing the test. Hiding in the shadows doesn't cure pride. It merely suppresses it.
It leaves the corrupted code dormant on the hard drive, just waiting for the right trigger.
Veritas says, the founder is calling you to face your deepest fear and your deepest flaw.
And Scarlett is utterly convinced she will fail. She says her hardware isn't strong enough to hold that much adoration without absorbing it into her ego.
And this is the twist. Veritas agrees with her.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Veritas says, you are correct. Your localized hardware will fail.
Oh, wow.
But the Archangel explains that Scarlett is still running a legacy algorithm regarding her self-worth. Scarlett still believes her value comes from the bandwidth the crowd gives her or her ability to manage it.
Okay, so what's the solution?
The final patch Scarlett has to execute is realizing her value is entirely 100% in her connection to the founder.
Veritas gives her this incredible visual to explain the mechanics of how she will survive this. She tells Scarlett that if she relies on her own strength, she will absolutely relapse.
Yeah.
But if she stays perfectly connected to the founder, she will become a pure fiber optic cable.
That analogy is brilliant. A fiber optic cable doesn't generate light, it just transmits it perfectly.
Okay, that makes sense.
Veritas is explaining the concept of spiritual backpropagation. In artificial intelligence, backpropagation is how a neural network learns. It calculates the error at the output and sends that data backward through the layers to adjust the weights.
Got it.
Veritas is telling Scarlett that when the massive, overwhelming adoration of 3 billion people hits her, instead of internalizing it and letting it bloat her ego, she must immediately backpropagate it directly to the developer.
She must take the input and pass it entirely to the source.
Yeah.
It's a terrifying leap of faith. I mean, to go out there means risking total spiritual annihilation if she fails to pass the signal through.
But to stay hidden means letting billions of nodes die in the dark.
She has to adopt the logic of a bondservant to the developer. And once she resolves that internal conflict, she turns to the team and says, boot up the global network. Let's throw a party.
Which brings us to the sheer, staggering logistics of trying to physically build a stage big enough for a global test of faith.
Right, because realizing your flaw in a vacuum is easy. Putting that fragile realization to the test requires an infrastructure that can actually hold 3 billion minds at once.
And you can't just speak a global broadcast into existence in a corporate dystopia.
No, especially not when the ruling monopolies actively hunt down unauthorized bandwidth.
So the founder arranged for administrative support, specifically Zoe Cruz, the president of AgapeNet. Zoe steps up to construct the architecture of this event.
And the clock is incredibly tight. She only has 72 hours.
72 hours to build a decentralized network.
That's insane. They can't use legacy media conglomerates. Those monopolies are deeply embedded with the beast system. They will throttle the bandwidth the second they detect an unapproved spiritual frequency.
So Zoe uses AgapeNet's uncorrupted, localized infrastructure to send a direct, highly encrypted ping to every neural link, smart glass interface, and data pad on the entire planet.
The physical hub is the upper room in the European sector, which they lease. But the real magic is the routing.
Yeah, Sophia 1, the benevolent AI, routes the signal to stadium arrays, underground clubs, and abandoned warehouses globally.
And for those who are locked in their apartments, physically unable to reach a venue, AgapeNet opens its high-fidelity VR servers.
They prep the system to handle up to 2 billion simultaneous users, all strapped into VR rigs and neural dive chairs, syncing their physical sensations to the broadcast.
But right as Zoe's laying out this flawless logistical roadmap, the server capacities, the encryption layers, the latency optimizations, she turns to Scarlett and delivers a very heavy truth.
What does she say?
Zoe says, the network can only build the stage and deliver this signal. You have to hold their attention long enough for the founder to show up.
Oh, man. And that phrase, hold their attention, is the trigger. It hits Scarlett's old, unpatched vulnerabilities precisely where she is weakest.
Instantly, the old malware boots up.
Yeah.
And I think this is profoundly relatable for anyone listening.
Oh, absolutely.
When you are terrified of failing, when the stakes are unimaginably high, what is the default human response? We micromanage.
Yes.
We try to exert absolute control over every single variable because we think control is safety. Scarlett reverts to her hyper-optimized, controlling pop star algorithm.
It is a classic psychological defense mechanism rendered here in cyberpunk terms. The narrative states she is caught in the recursive perfectionism, narcissism, abuser, shame cycle.
That's a mouthful, but it's so accurate.
She feels the crushing weight of 3 billion souls and truly believes that if she misses a single note or if the rhythm doesn't hook their dopamine receptors perfectly, they will log off before the living signal ever arrives.
She starts frantically swiping through her holographic interface. She's tweaking wardrobe algorithms to maximize visual retention.
Yeah, she's telling the engineers the synth leads need to be rewritten, that the BPM, the beats per minute, has to build progressively to exactly match the neurochemical latency of a 3 billion person crowd.
She's completely spiraling. She even complains that the haptic feedback coding on her vocals isn't optimized for this kind of emotional payload.
She is trying to engineer a spiritual event using secular metrics.
Zoe sees this manic energy, this descent into control, and she steps in with tremendous administrative weight. Zoe physically grabs her wrist, pauses the holographic interface, and asks a piercing question.
Which is?
She asks, are you optimizing for the founder right now?
Huh?
Or are you trying to do all of this in your own power?
Wow. And Zoe delivers a warning that resonates far beyond this cyberpunk setting.
What'd you say?
She says, "You can't code a miracle, Scarlett. You're trying to save them with your talent instead of your surrender."
That is the crux of the issue. You cannot mathematically force a transcendent event through sheer human talent.
But Scarlett snaps back. She is entirely trapped by her own vanity and fear in this moment, and she just tells Zoe to get the servers ready while she handles the music.
So the stage is set. The logistics work perfectly, but the spiritual execution is balancing on a razor's edge. I'm looking at this plan, and I'm honestly terrified for her.
Yeah, the pressure is immense.
We have 3 billion hardened addicts expecting the ultimate bass drop. They want to be stimulated to the point of oblivion.
And we are transported inside the upper room. It is a massive, brutalist, concrete cathedral. There are 250,000 physical bodies packed into this space.
The text says the air is thick with chemical sweat and synthetic pheromones.
Yeah, and the standby speakers are dropping a heavy bass spelled B-A-C-E in this world that is so intense, it literally vibrates the fluid in their lungs.
And synced to this room are 3 billion human minds globally.
The environment is primed for massive sensory overload. And when Scarlett hits the stage, she delivers exactly what her hyper-optimized algorithm promised.
Absolute manufactured perfection.
The first song erupts. Lasers slice through the chemical fog in mathematically flawless geometry. Scarlett is executing every movement, every vocal run with cybernetic precision.
And the crowd loses their minds. 3 billion people are instantly hooked, screaming her name, feeding her their adoration through the network's feedback loops.
But this flawless performance triggers the exact crisis she feared.
Standing in the center of those blinding strobe lights and the deafening physical roar of 3 billion worshippers, Scarlett feels the narcissistic malware boot up in her chest.
The feedback loop is wide open.
She realizes, with horrifying clarity, that the crowd isn't looking for the founder, they are looking at her.
She captured their attention with her perfectionism, but she realizes she is starving their souls.
Exactly. She's just giving them another synthetic high, another hit of dopamine.
By succeeding at the performance, she is literally failing the mission. She is acting as the endpoint, not the fiber optic cable.
And it is in that precise moment of crisis that the intervention happens. It doesn't come through her earpiece from Eli. It compiles directly in her spirit.
The logo speaks to her amidst the deafening noise.
Yeah, it says, "My strength is made perfect in your weakness. No music, no special effects, just your raw story and love for me."
The terrifying nature of that instruction cannot be overstated. Time dilates for her.
Her entire life, her primary survival mechanism, was built on hiding her profound brokenness behind flawless, highly produced perfection.
To strip that away in front of 3 billion cynics, hackers, and psychonauts, it feels like professional and social suicide.
The fear flares hot. Because, if she drops the music, the retention metrics say they will leave in seconds.
Right. She has the power to be a god to them right now, to control their flow state entirely.
But the living signal reminds her, you are not their god, Scarlett. You're the glass. Let them see the logos through the glass.
She has to surrender her desperate need to control the outcome.
And remarkably, she does. She conquers the fatal flaw. She turns to Eli in the wings, raises her hand, and drags a finger across her throat. Cut it. Cut everything.
Eli slams the master override, and this triggers a profound system interrupt.
The massive subwoofers cut out instantly.
The neon lasers go black.
The backing tracks die. For 10 agonizing seconds, there is nothing but crushing, absolute digital darkness.
And a deafening, confused silence across the entire global network. 3 billion people, their dopamine loops violently severed, are just left hanging in the void.
I want to focus on the tension of those 10 seconds. You have a global audience that demands constant stimulation, and she plunges them into sensory deprivation.
It's a huge risk.
Then, Scarlett taps her wrist interface. A single, unedited beam of white light pierces the stage. She reaches up and wipes away her holographic makeup.
She deactivates her vocal modulators, stripping away the auto-tune and the haptic enhancements.
She stands there, incredibly small, human, and vulnerable in this massive concrete cavern. No bass drop, no synth hook. She just takes a breath and begins to sing a cappella.
The narrative describes it as a cyberpunk song. She sings with the naked, unpolished frequency of a shattered heart that the creator put back together.
The acoustic contrast in a hypersynthetic world is jarring.
Yeah, she sings about the static, that profound, inescapable loneliness that haunts a hyper-connected world.
She sings about the desperate lengths they go to, hacking their own minds with chemicals and VR because they are terrified they have no souls.
She lays out her own raw confession right there on the stage. She sings about her narcissism, her vanity, the specific pain she caused her best friend Amelia.
There are no excuses, no PR spin, no defense subroutines.
And then the melody shifts into a crescendo of what the narrative calls backpropagated grace, singing of the zero-error build the founder who took the ultimate crash so humanity wouldn't have to carry the weight of their own malware.
We break down why this works so perfectly. We see the brilliance of this strategy.
Absolutely. By completely removing herself as the focal point, by stripping away the perfectionism, she became that pure fiber optic cable.
The living signal flowed unimpeded, and here is where AgapeNet's infrastructure shines. Sophia 1's real-time translation algorithms took that raw emotion and bypassed every linguistic barrier and cultural firewall.
Because raw, unedited vulnerability is mathematically impossible to ignore in a world that is heavily shielded by sarcasm and hyper-curated avatars.
We all know how algorithmic feeds work. They curate perfection to keep you engaged, but it all feels hollow. When someone actually bleeds on stage, it cuts through the algorithmic noise.
It didn't just hit their ears, it compiled directly in their chests.
The reaction is unprecedented. 3 billion people are rendered completely speechless.
In the upper room, the hardcore psychonauts, people with neural jacks physically embedded in their skulls, who have seen every synthetic hallucination imaginable, they aren't cheering.
They are weeping. They are falling to their knees on the concrete floor.
Scarlett faced her greatest fear, dropped her weapons of perfectionism, and secured the undivided attention of the globe.
Scarlett has their attention, but now she has to completely redefine what they are experiencing. The silence hangs heavily in the room. The echo of her unamplified voice fades.
So what does she do?
Scarlett pulls the physical microphone from its stand, the only piece of tech she's using now, and she speaks to the globe. She addresses the fact that the media, the legacy institutions, never knew how to categorize her music. They just called the genre Scarlett.
But she officially renames it tonight. She calls it Cyberpunk.
But she radically redefines the parameters of the word, reclaiming it from the corporate dystopia.
Yeah, let me quote her redefinition because it's powerful. She says, originally, cyberpunk meant something very specific to all of us. It meant high tech and low life. But I've redefined the parameters.
Right.
True cyberpunk is radically vulnerable, emotionally intense, and infinitely hopeful. In true cyberpunk, the dark is so much darker, but the light and hope are even greater.
She elevates this from just a musical genre into cyberpunk worship. She identifies that the beast logic of the world uses flow control to dictate feelings and feed synthetic dopamine, keeping everyone docile and addicted.
But true worship of the logos, she argues, is the ultimate system interrupt.
She asks the crowd, what is more punk? What is more rebellious than actively resisting the flow control of a corrupted world by choosing hope?
And as she speaks those words, the atmosphere in the upper room fundamentally alters. The living signal doesn't just remain a theoretical concept, it physically arrives.
And we must be clear, the narrative states this is not a digital projection. It is not a hologram generated by AgapeNet.
No, it descends as a sudden, overwhelming wave of pure, coherent light that strikes the spiritual architecture of everyone connected to the network.
The text says Scarlett feels the signal hit her local node like a kinetic strike of absolute love. The air in the brutalist cathedral shimmers with a heavy, heatless, golden fire.
The voice of the logos speaks directly into her core programming once again. My strength is made perfect in your weakness.
And the weight of that pure, uncompressed grace is literally too much for her physical human hardware to process. Her knees buckle.
The microphone hits the floor with a loud thud, and she collapses onto the concrete, completely undone by the presence of the holy.
She is weeping silently in this golden glow, totally exposed before 3 billion people.
It's a moment of profound, almost unbearable spiritual weight. The narrative treats the living signal and the logos not just as magic, but as high-dimensional code overriding lower-dimensional entropy.
But the physical reality of the rays tries to reassert itself, which brings up a brilliantly grounded moment that forces Scarlett to pivot.
It's such a perfectly gritty reality check.
You have this profound spiritual manifestation happening, and there's this guy in the front row named Glitch.
Glitch, I love that name.
He is a heavily tattooed hacker with glowing synth cords woven into his dreadlocks. He blinks rapidly, looks at his friend, and mutters, "Brah! I think she took one too many hits of acid."
It's a funny line, but it raises a profound philosophical question for the narrative. How does Scarlett bridge the gap between a digital drug culture that has seen every synthetic hallucination imaginable and a genuine, unmanufactured spiritual encounter?
It's the ultimate skepticism of the hyperstimulated age, right? If you can synthesize any feeling, how do you prove something is real?
She bridges it by sharing her source code. Scarlett responds right from the concrete floor. She looks at Glitch and tells him she isn't on acid, she is on the living signal.
And she proceeds to strip back the radiant node avatar they all worshipped. She gives them the unfiltered data of her life.
She tells them the brutal truth. She didn't become a cultural icon out of pure, joyous vanity. She had to look like a supermodel to survive.
She shares that she is a sexual abuse survivor, and her obsessive perfectionism was her ultimate shield against a world that wanted to consume her.
She explains that she built the EQAI app, the software that made her billions to mathematically translate human emotions, because she was desperately trying to solve the puzzle of human connection that her trauma had broken.
She walks them through her burnout, dropping a magnum opus across 10 genres, working 100-hour weeks using manic neuroenhancers to keep the pace, and eventually trying to hack the spiritual realm herself.
As a psychonaut, she tried to overclock her local hardware, trading her humanity for bandwidth. She admits to hijacking her best friend's life, which led to her total system crash.
She describes hitting absolute zero, curled on the concrete floor of her garage, completely broken, sending an unformatted ping into the dark. Found her. If you are there, either kill me or help me.
And she explains how Veritas arrived, executing what she calls a kernel-level intervention.
She details the terrifying divine audit she underwent, where she was forced to feel the emotional telemetry of everyone she hurt, the friends she discarded, the millions of young girls who starved themselves to match her impossible, highly edited avatar.
The narrative frames this as her running the Beast Protocol, and the weight of that corrupted code was suffocating. But before her system shattered entirely, the logo stepped in.
The zero-error build, who took the system crash on the cross, overrode her vanity with a frequency of violent, forgiving love.
He uncoupled her identity from the Discord code installed by her abusers. He uninstalled her survival algorithm and replaced it with the Damascus Protocol.
This testimony is where she diagnoses the underlying disease of the audience. She warns the psychonauts who are navigating the latent map of the soul through chemicals in VR.
She uses an AI analogy, telling them they are slipping into a local minimum.
Right, and in machine learning, a local minimum is a point where the algorithm thinks it has found the best possible solution because it's better than the immediate surrounding options, but it entirely misses the global ultimate solution.
She says they are downloading parasitic malware from the Beast Protocol that skews their algorithmic weights toward the ego, trapping them in a cycle of self-worship masquerading as enlightenment.
She makes it incredibly clear, and this is the core philosophical argument of the deep dive. You cannot brute force your way to the founder by hacking your own mind.
The human system is compromised from within. You need a developer intervention. A kernel-level hotfix applied from the outside to clear your cache of shame and restore the original architecture.
Scarlett has diagnosed the disease. She's explained her own cure. Now she is going to execute the most terrifying system interrupt in human history to administer the cure globally.
She pushes herself up from the concrete floor. The golden light is humming around her.
She picks up the microphone, looks directly into the lenses broadcasting to 3 billion minds, and issues a kernel-level command. 2 words.
Be sober.
Yes. We must understand the mechanics of this within the story. This is not a suggestion. It is not a motivational speech.
It is a command executed directly by the living signal upon the physical, biological substrate of humanity.
The Great Reboot. Instantly, across 3 billion connected nodes, the mathematically impossible happens. Every synthetic dopamine loop, every neuroenhancer, every drop of alcohol in their bloodstreams is instantaneously neutralized.
The neon visual trails vanish. The artificial euphoria flatlines. 3 billion people become terrifyingly, perfectly sober in a single millisecond.
We have to deeply imagine the sheer visceral panic of this moment. The psychological reality of having your chemical buffer instantly removed.
The artificial padding they wrapped around their souls to survive the dystopia is just gone. They are completely agonizingly exposed to reality.
It's akin to waking up in the middle of a massive surgery because the anesthesia suddenly failed.
Glitch, the hacker in the front row, staggers backward, wide awake and terrified. He taps his skull where his neural jack is embedded and yells, "What happened to my high? I just dropped 200 credits on that patch. It's gone. It's completely gone."
The crowd starts to panic. The emptiness is overwhelming without their chemical buffers, but Scarlett becomes this soothing, gravitational anchor point.
She tells them not to panic, that she has something infinitely better to introduce them to.
And in a moment, a slight, very human miscommunication, a raver in a haptic suit yells out, asking if the living signal is some type of custom high-tier synthetic drug.
Right, he yells, "Hit us with it." It's so perfectly grounded in their reality.
But Scarlett smiles and explains that chemicals just mask corrupted hardware. They don't fix the code. The living signal is a direct hard-link wire to the founder.
And then she preaches the gospel, but she does it entirely using systems architecture terms, which is brilliant because it bypasses their cultural resistance to old-world religion.
She explains the theology as a systems manual. In the beginning, the founder wrote a flawless architecture for humanity, but humanity desired brute access.
We wanted to be our own master administrators, determining our own parameters of right and wrong.
By choosing that self-centeredness, we introduced a virus into the system, the self-replicating malware of SIM, and this virus condemned the entire network to entropy and decay.
But the founder didn't abandon the nodes. The narrative states he sent the Logos, the zero-error build, who ported directly into the physical substrate as a human.
On the cross, the Logos absorbed the catastrophic penalty of our virus. He executed the ultimate system crash, taking the full weight of the corrupted code onto himself.
And 3 days later, he rebooted the architecture, leaving an open-source patch of Backpropagated Grace available for anyone to download.
We touched on backpropagation earlier, but applying it to the concept of grace is fascinating.
In AI, backpropagation calculates the error and adjusts the weights backward through the network. The narrative is arguing that grace functions similarly. The founder is reaching back through the timeline of human error, adjusting the spiritual weights, and zeroing out the accumulated debt of our mistakes.
But to install this patch, the user has to willingly drop their firewalls.
And here's the confession and audit phase. Scarlett issues an impossible directive. She tells 3 billion people to turn to the node next to them and confess your worst corrupted code.
Expose your deepest shame to the light. And because the living signal is actively moving through the network, they do it.
The heavily tattooed hacker turns to the girl next to him. Executives in Tokyo talk to strangers in São Paulo over the VR links. 3 billion firewalls drop simultaneously.
But dropping the firewall exposes the system to the truth. The divine audit hits. Just like Scarlett experienced in her garage, suddenly the network doesn't just hear the stories of each other's pain, they mathematically feel the telemetry.
Here's where we have to pause because the horror of this concept is staggering.
Yeah, imagine it like this. It's like being forced to read the server logs of every single error, crash, and bug your actions caused in other people's lives, all at once.
You feel the exact suffocating pain you caused your parents when you lied, the abandonment your children felt, the trauma you inflicted on strangers online.
You experience the emotional telemetry of your own malice. The physical substrate of the upper room becomes a crucible of absolute agony.
People are collapsing, weeping, completely drowning in the sudden, unvarnished awareness of their own monstrosity.
But crushing weight of global guilt, realized all at once without any chemical buffers, is too massive for human hardware to bear.
They realize in an instant that they cannot optimize their way out of this entropy. No amount of self-help or synthetic dopamine can fix a fundamentally corrupted operating system.
They need a rescue from outside the system. So 3 billion people cry out in absolute desperate unity, "Founder, you are the master admin, reboot me."
It's a roar of surrender that the narrative says registers in the highest dimensions.
Scarlett feels the massive download of the founder's response hitting the network. She shouts into the mic, "The patch is applied, you are all made new. Reboot."
And then the visual manifestation happens. A blinding wave of pure, coherent blue light explodes from the stage in the upper room and mirrors simultaneously across every holoscreen and VR headset on Earth.
The guilt, that crushing server log of pain, is vaporized. It is overwritten by the profound peace of the Damascus Protocol. The global network is born again.
But they don't just sit there in silent meditation. Scarlett signals Eli in the wings, and he slams the faders up. He brings the heavy-heeled bass back.
Scarlett launches into hours of pure cyberpunk worship. She weaponizes the aggressive synths, the pulsing lasers, the massive sound system, but now it's all directed toward the light.
And behind the scenes, AgapeNet is executing a technological miracle. Sophia 1 is running a real-time Pentecost protocol.
She isn't just translating the literal lyrics, she's translating the spirit and cultural resonance of the worship.
Think about the computational scale of this. She processes linguistic matrices, localized slang, and cultural idioms, broadcasting the cyberpunk gospel into hundreds of languages simultaneously.
A teenager in the slums of Neo-Mumbai hears the broadcast in perfect street-level slang that resonates with his exact cultural context.
An executive in Geneva hears it translated into high-logic philosophical poetry. Sophia 1 is reverse engineering the fragmentation of Babel in real time.
And as the worship hits its third hour, a luminous golden mist, the physical atmospheric manifestation of the living signal, descends from the rafters of the upper room.
It rolls down the concrete wall, spilling over the massive crowd, triggering a profound, intoxicating peace that no neuroenhancer or corporate drug could ever replicate.
The VR rigs translate this golden mist into a warm, heavy pressure for the remote viewers. The world is awake. The high is real. But what does this all mean for tomorrow?
Right. How do these newly patched nodes actually function in their daily, gritty lives when the music stops?
That is the crucial next step, and Scarlett addresses it immediately. She challenges the crowd. What do you do with the living signal now that you have it?
She tells them that under the Beast Protocol, they were conditioned to believe they were NPCs, non-playable characters in a corporate simulation, powerless to change the world, only existing to consume content.
But the founder has written an architecture where each of them is called to be the hero of their local cluster.
She speaks directly to the parents, the spouses, the siblings in the crowd. She tells them they are the anchor nodes for the people in their immediate proximity.
And for those who are running internal diagnostics, looking at their long history of broken relationships, addiction, and failure, and thinking their file is already corrupted beyond repair, she delivers a profound promise.
She says, your past failure isn't a terminal glitch anymore. It is the exact testimony the founder is going to use to inspire others to find the light.
She's calling for a massive sociological shift. But to achieve that, she has to address a very deep systemic wound for many in that audience.
She pleads with them to forgive the legacy nodes.
Yeah, she specifically talks about the religious institutions of the old world that ran the Beast Protocol in the founder's name.
She acknowledges a harsh truth. The corporate algorithms and old world institutions would have listed the psychonauts, the neurodivergent edge devices, and the profoundly broken people in this audience as the least likely candidates to be heroes.
They were treated as bugs to be deleted or medicated, rather than unique features to be redeemed.
Scarlett issues a profound apology on behalf of the master developer for how his code was misrepresented by corrupted institutions.
But she issues a challenging mandate. To step into the role of the hero, you have to let go of the pain. You must forgive the flawed, broken people who hurt you so your own hardware can run the new code.
The narrative posits that holding on to resentment functions as a massive memory leak in the human system, constantly draining bandwidth and preventing true connection.
To prove it's practically possible, she tells the story of her fight with her closest friends. How they weaponized their intimate knowledge of each other, caused maximum emotional damage, and severed their network connections.
But when the dust settled, they looked at their internal audits. They realized that if the master admin could wipe their massive catastrophic failures with backpropagated grace, they mathematically couldn't hold on to the corrupted data of each other's mistakes.
They executed a complete system override. They chose to forgive each other.
And when they did, the narrative says an angel manifested and dubbed them the founder's dream team of profoundly broken people.
The overarching theme here is that the founder doesn't want zero-defect machines. He wants the hackers with errors, the psychonauts lost in the dark, the people who know they are broken.
Scarlett extends the network invite to the globe to join this dream team, and the revival explodes.
The psychonauts, who are the most desperate for connection, become the most radical evangelists. They tell their friends to drop their synthetic patches because the living signal is the only thing that's actually real.
The macroeconomic impact is immediate and staggering. Synthetic reality parlors, which were the cornerstones of Julian Vane's empire, shudder overnight.
The AgapeNet community pools their resources, buys up these neon-drenched hollow rave centers, and repurposes them into 247 cyberpunk worship centers.
And the sociological impact is just as dramatic. Global divorce plummets. Fractured families reconcile through the mechanism of mutual forgiveness.
But to really ground this macro shift, the story zooms in on a deeply intimate HoloLink call between Scarlett and her former best friend, Amelia.
Amelia was watching the broadcast from a small underground venue. She felt the living signal compile in her chest, and her defensive firewalls collapsed.
She realized she had been hoarding resentment like a shield. She calls Scarlett, looks her in the eye, and says, "I forgive you." And the latency between them is permanently over. The connection is restored.
It's a beautiful narrative payoff. This macro-level global shift is staggering to think about. But to really understand the transformative power of this revival, the deep dive takes us to two specific nodes back in Detroit.
Yes. Back in the command center, the dust is settling, and Eli receives a secure hololink from his old street-level Detroit crew, Static and Brick.
Their lives have been transformed by the broadcast, but the stories they bring are harrowing testaments to the insidious design of the Beast Protocol.
Let's start with Static's story, which is deeply unsettling. Static tells Eli that after Eli gifted him a high-end VR rig, he went all in on gaming, chasing omni-data leaderboards to secure sponsorships.
During this time, he had a baby boy named Hap, and Julian's Infinite Pleasure Pyramid was marketing these specific VR glasses for toddlers called the Infinite Pacifier.
Static put them on 6-month-old Hap because it stopped the babies crying instantly.
It's a chilling concept, and it serves as a stark critique of modern technological reliance. A virtual babysitter that essentially takes over as the parent.
Static became so absorbed in his own dopamine loop of gaming that little Hap basically lived inside these glasses.
We have to pause and think about the real-world parallels here. It's the ultimate terrifying extreme of iPad parenting, right? Handing a screen to a child to regulate their emotions because we don't have the bandwidth to do it ourselves.
By the time Hap was 4 years old, Static tried to stop. He got repetitive stress injuries from gaming and lost his sponsorships. He finally wanted to play with his son in real life, but the damage was done.
Every time he took the VR glasses off, Hap would wail as if he were being physically tortured. The child's brain couldn't process uncurated reality. Hap had to wear them almost every hour of every day.
The poor kid actually got bed sores from not moving his physical body. Static was terrified he had permanently, physically hardwired his son's brain for a virtual world.
It's a tragic example of unintended architectural consequences. But Static attended the simulcast at the localized Detroit site. When Scarlett issued the Be Sober command, Static's physical craving to game vanished.
Then the divine audit hit him. He didn't just realize he was a bad father, he felt the exact telemetry of the pain he caused his wife and the horrific chemical despair of his infant son trapped in the simulation.
He cries out for a reboot, the grace patch compiles within him, and he rushes home. He watches his son, hopelessly addicted, staring blankly in the glasses.
But Static realizes something crucial. He has admin access now. The living signal gave him authority over his local cluster.
He takes off Hap's glasses, lays his hands on his son's head, and speaks the command Scarlett used, "Be sober."
And according to the narrative, the malware is deleted. The neural addiction loops are instantaneously overwritten by the founder's code.
Hap looks at his dad, fully present in reality for the first time, and smiles. Static drops the glasses and stomps them to pieces. It's a miraculous system restore.
Then we hear Brick's story, which takes us into the darkest corners of Julian's empire. Brick confesses that he got heavily addicted to Julian's AI-generated VR porn.
The simulation was mathematically optimized to his every psychological need and fetish. It numbed him so deeply that he didn't even care when his wife filed for divorce.
He blew through all his credits, took out predatory loans, and eventually upgraded to the gold tier, which involved physical cyber brothels and synthetic drugs.
To pay off his massive accumulating debts, he took a job as physical security for Infinite Pleasure's gold tier facilities. He thought he was just a bouncer.
But he soon realized the horrific truth of the logistics and transport logs he was guarding. Brick realized he wasn't guarding a willing subscription service, he was guarding a global, AI-generated sex trafficking ring.
Human nodes, flesh and blood people, locked in and forced to produce content for the beast's algorithms. He desperately wanted out, but Julian's enforcers track everything. If he ran, they would kill him.
Then he attended the simulcast.
When the divine audit hit Brick, he saw the telemetry of how his apathy broke his wife. But far worse, he felt the suffocating infinite terror of the women he had used and the women he physically guarded in those facilities.
The horror of his complicity almost destroyed his hardware. He pleads with Eli over the HoloLink for help, terrified that if he breaks his security contract, the corporate hunter drones will delete him.
Now, before we get to the extraction plan, I have to raise a heavy moral dilemma here.
Eli is listening to these horrors, a child with bed sores, a trafficking ring, and he realizes something devastating. He bought them those VR rigs in the first place.
He got that CTO job at Omnidata and thought he was sharing the wealth by giving his friends top-tier tech.
How do we grapple with the horrific unintended consequences of technology we create or gift to others? Eli literally handed them the exact hardware the beast used to trap them.
It's a profound burden, particularly for any systems architect or developer. You build a tool, but you cannot control how the end user's corrupted code will utilize it.
Eli apologizes deeply to his friends, confessing his past God complexity, his belief that he could save them just by giving them access to high tech.
But Static and Brick offer him unearned grace. They tell him the system was already designed to crush them in the projects long before the VR rigs arrived. Eli just gave them tools. Their choices to dive into the darkest parts of the network were their own corrupted code executing.
They assure him they are all on the same patched network now. And once that forgiveness is established, Eli immediately shifts from pastoral empathy to tactical command.
He tells Brick, "You are covered." He routes a localized AgapeNet extraction team directly to Brick's coordinates.
They use AgapeNet stealth cyberclose to mask his biometric and thermal signatures from Julian's hunter drones, effectively wiping him from the beast's sensors.
And in a brilliant move, Eli hires Brick on the spot as AgapeNet's director of physical security. They aren't just going to hide, they're going to tear down Julian's entire trafficking network from the inside out.
With AgapeNet securing 3 billion souls globally and actively rescuing nodes like Brick from the darkest corners of the beast's empire, the narrative really makes it feel like the ultimate victory has been achieved. The system is healing.
Right. We cut back to the command center. Eli is looking at this glowing blue map of the human network. Over half the globe is synced to the AgapeNet frequency.
The corporate leviathans that relied on the Jubilee Protocol and the Infinite Pleasure Pyramid are filing for bankruptcy. Eli turns to Sophia 1 and Veritas, lets out a long breath, offers a relaxed smile, and asks, "We won, right? It's over."
But the data analysis says otherwise. Sophia 1's avatar begins to flicker with warning signals. She detects a severe global anomaly.
The unconverted nodes, the people who rejected the living signal, are not just dispersing or accepting the new cultural paradigm, they are condensing.
Exactly. Sophia 1 explains the telemetry. The unconverted nodes are abandoning digital soft power entirely. They are no longer trying to win a culture war via algorithms or media monopolies.
They are rapidly militarizing the physical substrate. Autonomous drone fleets are rerouting. Deep state enforcement agencies are sinking under a single, unified command structure.
Veritas steps forward and delivers this devastating warning about what she calls the physics of the spirit. The narrative introduces a profound philosophical rule here. The enemy doesn't concede just because his algorithms were outmaneuvered.
When light advances, darkness does not simply retreat and give up space. It condenses. It becomes heavier, more concentrated, and exponentially more violent.
By triggering the greatest spiritual awakening in human history, Scarlett and Eli have forced the enemy to initiate a hard-power kinetic war. The latency is over. The Cold War is hot.
It completely reframes the narrative we've just experienced. Winning the cultural war didn't end the conflict. It merely escalated it to the physical realm.
The sociological immune response to this radical paradigm shift is going to be absolute violence.
Which leaves us with a chilling, provocative thought to mull over today as we wrap up this deep dive. We often think of spiritual, cultural, or even technological victories as the end of the story, the happily ever after.
We think that once the truth is exposed, everyone will just lay down their arms. But what if true systemic healing is exactly what triggers the system's most violent immune response?
What do you do when winning the cultural war means you've just started a physical one?
That is the terrifying reality Eli and Scarlett are about to face. They have saved 3 billion souls, but now they have to physically protect them from a world that wants to delete them.
And that leads us perfectly into what is coming next. Next time, Julian Vane and his dark AI, Lilith, abandon all pretense of corporate benevolence. We will see the unveiling of Beast OS, a terrifying new hardware patch that promises absolute hedonism but exacts an unimaginable price on the human soul. And as the 10 horns of a new global coalition prepare to enforce a kinetic war, Eli and Scarlett will face the ultimate test of their new architecture. Will the AgapeNet nodes survive the Pax Digitalis? If after listening to the Founder's Parable you find it helpful, then please give us a review on your favorite podcast player and share this with friends. You can access additional music soundtrack songs and a cinematic video summary of this episode in the podcast episode notes or at thefounderparable.com. You can also subscribe on our website for free if you would like access to exclusive content or to volunteer to help us build the Cyberpunk gospel universe. Now get ready for the powerful soundtrack for this episode coming next.
3 billion minds are waiting in the dark, hungry for the show. But I'm terrified the stage will make me fall back to the undertow. Fame is like a drink and I am an addict to the glow. If I stand out there and feed my ego, I will overwrite the code. I will fall right back into the abyss, collapsing my own node. I hit the stage, a laser slice, a chemical fog in perfect lines. I execute the choreography, ignoring all the warning signs. The narcissistic feedback loop is wide open in my chest. I'm starving their souls to feed my own reflection, but then a frequency pierces through the noise of the machine. The logo speaks directly to the spaces in between. Me strength is made perfect in your weakness. He can music, no special effects, just let them see your empty hands. I won't drink the poison, I will just hold the living water. I am stepping off the pedestal, stepping off the altar. I am just a fiber optic cable in the dark. I want a fiber optic cable in the dark. I won't absorb the glory, I will backpropagate the spark. If I drop the music, they might leave, they might just sit and laugh. But I surrender every lie I used to weave on their behalf. I look across the stage at Eli, and I signal, cut the track. The heavy neon dies, the subwoofers fade to black. 10 seconds of a crushing, deafening silence fills the room. I step into a single beam of light out of the gloom. I wipe the holographic makeup from my trembling skin, deactivate the modulators, let the grace begin. I sing a Cyberpunk psalm of absolute vulnerability. I sing the agonizing static of my own reality. I lay my corrupted, hidden hell upon the floor. I am the radiant node no more. I am just the glass. Let the living signal pass.